This is Genealogy Chat. We are coming to you live from the Willenard Genealogy Center, which is a service of the Eckhart Public Library. As I said, we're live, and you're welcome anytime to be a studio audience member. We're in the Willenard Genealogy Center building. Just come in, and we'd love for you to be here to watch the show. Today's guest is a very wonderful person. His name is Craig Berndt. He's a Butler native. He's written several books. One includes Lake James Electric Railway. Yep. And you're here to discuss Butler Railroad history. So tell us your story, Craig.
Well, thank you. Good. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, so I'm a native of Butler, and I've written quite a bit about all the railroads that served DeKalb County, and I've made several presentations on them. So today we're going to talk strictly about Butler's railroads and possibly cover the rest of the towns in other presentations. We have discussed it. So Butler is right here in the northeast part of the county. The county altogether was served by 8 different railroads at various times. 7 of those were what we call steam railroads, now diesel, and the other one was an electric interurban named the Toledo and Chicago. Butler had 3 of those 8 railroads that came through it. The interurban was supposed to have gone through it, but it never made it past Waterloo here. It was supposed to go through Butler and on over into Ohio, but never made it. So we had the Wabash Railroad, the New York Central Railroad, and the Eel River Railroad. So these were the names and dates when construction was completed by each of those railroads to Butler. The Michigan Southern and Northern Indiana Railway, built from Toledo to Goshen. It had entered Butler in 1856 and was extended west in 1857. The Detroit, Eel River, and Illinois Railroad, built from Logansport to Butler, it arrived in Auburn in 1873 and in Butler in 1871, and Butler in 1873. The Detroit, Butler, and St. Louis Railroad, built from Detroit to Butler in 1881 and then from Butler to New Haven in 1902. So the first railroad up there was later called the New York Central. The second one was the Eel River and later the Vandalia. And the third and fourth railroads were later part of the Wabash Railroad system. So we'll look at each of the 3 railroads as they arrived. The New York Central was the first one, actually is the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern. It came into Butler from Ohio in 1856 and sat here for a year, and then 1857 was extended across the county and all the way to Goshen. It was called the Airline because it was designed to be a very fast New York City to Chicago route. So the first one, Michigan Southern and Northern Indiana, constructed from Toledo to Elkhart in 1852 to 1857. In 1856, it made it to Butler. 1857, extended west from Butler, crossed the Wabash Railroad in Butler, and it was connected to the Eel River Railroad. It was renamed, or it became part of the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway in 1869, then the New York Central in 1914, Penn Central in 1968, Consolidated Rail in 1976, and Norfolk Southern Railway today. That's what it looked like, and the map on the left was an 1880 map, and Lakeshore and Michigan Southern built a 6-stall roundhouse in the 1860s on the west side of town. The map down below is another view of it. The dashed lines here were the New York Central, and then the Vandalia Railroad, the Eel River, connected to it here. This is on the east side of Butler looking west. The tower, the tall tower at the left side here was WB, that was its telegraph call sign. So we're seeing WB Tower, and it was at the crossing of the Wabash Railroad. It was removed in 1957, and the lower photo shows that view looking west after 1957. Some early pictures or one early picture, the westbound 20th Century Limited, which was the premier train on the New York Central in 1935. By the late 1940s and early 1950s, that train was running from New York to Chicago in 16 hours. So it was an extremely fast train for the time. The lower photo is a westbound Amtrak train in 1997, and Amtrak is still running on this route today. It's an interior view of the tower in 1917. These were called interlocking towers, and all of these levers had to be moved in a specific sequence to change signals for the trains at the crossing to give permission for one train to go through and block all other trains from going through. So when you moved one lever, it locked or unlocked other levers that you could then move so that you would get everything done in a certain order and allow the train through that you wanted to allow through. The lower photo was taken at the depot on Eastern Avenue in Butler, and the man there is Claude Cook. He kept an exceptional diary of his day-to-day work and the trains that came through and everything. It's really good reading if you're into railroading. This picture up at the top left was looking west across Broadway in 1906. The Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railroad made numerous changes between Toledo and Goshen, and they went through in 1906 and took before photos, and then in 1907 they took after photos. So in this case, what they were doing was eliminating the side track that was between the mains here, and there were also two curves through Butler, and they reduced it to a single curve with what you see here today. But there's a lot of interesting things in here. This was the Eel River Railroad Depot and their shop building back here, and they had a roundhouse that's blocked by this gate tower. This was the New York Central's car repair barn. And over here you have a hotel and an Oregon granary. So this is a blow-up of the left side of that picture, and I did it for two reasons. This is the Eel River Railroad car repair shop, and here's New York Central's car repair shop, and here was a connecting track between them. Here's New York Central's water tank, and here's that 6-stall roundhouse that was on the other side of it. The roundhouse was demolished in 1907. The picture that was taken that year of showing the changes that had been made in the track, the roundhouse is gone. Niagara was the most powerful steam locomotive that New York Central ever had, and they were really wonderful machines. They came at the very end of steam power and were being replaced by diesels almost as fast as they were brought into the roster. So some of these locomotives only operated for about 5 years, and they were certainly built to last much, much longer than that. The lower photo, taken in 1952, just a couple years later, shows the wonderful lightning strike theme on a New York Central locomotive, and it's pulling a westbound freight train. This was taken in 1964. Butler was a very, very busy town at the time, railroad town, I mean, and so you have a switcher here. These are the two mainline tracks, and this switcher is westbound to one of the other yards in Butler, and there's another one back here working at the United Milk Factory. So we had two trains working the yards at one time, and when I was a kid, I would often see two trains at one time. It was busy. This is a 1908 photo looking west again down in the main yard. The things that we have in this photo include Butler Milling Company's grain mill here. The railroad owned this hay barn. There's the railroad depot. This was the Hotel Aldrich, which did have a pitched roof, but it burned, it had a fire a few years earlier and now has a flat roof. And then these are maintenance of way buildings that the railroad owned. In 1966, July 1966, I happened to have been a party to seeing this thing run. They were testing not jet engine power, but the effects of high-speed passenger cars, the effects they had on the track. And the jet engines just happened to be cheap power to make the train run, so they put them on top of this car and made 4 runs over a period of 2 days. And so I was able to get several photographs, and this thing set what is still the speed record in the United States, 183.85 miles per hour on the second run of the 4 runs that it made in those 2 days. The next railroad that entered the town was the Eel River Railroad, later called the Vandalia. It arrived in Butler in 1873. It was the last part of this 90-mile-long railroad to be built. You can see that it came up through Leato and then into the county, went through Auburn, Moore, and into Butler, and it ended at a connection to the Wabash Railroad in Butler. So here's its history. 1871, it was completed from Logansport to Auburn by the Detroit Eel River in Illinois. And it went from Auburn to Butler. It was completed in late 1873. It was renamed the Eel River Railroad in 1877. It was leased to the Wabash Railroad predecessor in 1879. And then it was owned by Pennsylvania Company and Pennsylvania Railroad subsidiaries from 1901 to 1968. And the Auburn to Butler section of track was abandoned in 1954, and the track was taken up in 1956. A map of that, this is the Vandalia coming down through it, connected end to end with the Wabash Railroad here in the middle of Broadway. The depot was sat here where the water tank is, the city's water tank today, and the city library is right here. And then it had major yards down through here and came down. At one time it had a roundhouse here, but it burned in 1901 and they didn't need it anymore, so it was replaced with a turnaround Y track. This is that earlier photo that we saw blown up again to show some more detail. The Eel River Railroad Depot was here, again, about where the water tank is today. The roundhouse was on the other side of this little shed. And then here was the car repair shop, and then all of the ladder tracks where they exchanged freight cars in the yards. That was the Eel River Depot. It was built in 1881. It was one of the largest depots on the line for a number of years. And then this picture was taken during the Interstate Commerce Commission valuation in 1916. I don't know when it was demolished, but it was gone certainly by 1956. Here's a photo of a Wabash railroad locomotive in about 1883, and we can see the Eel River Roundhouse here. It was a completely roofed roundhouse. It was truly round. It had 2 turntables, one outside and one inside. And this is a funeral train for a gentleman who worked on the railroad in Butler, and he was killed while coupling cars. And they decorated this train to take his remains out to wherever he was buried. So here we see the car repair barn in the background that we saw in that earlier photo, and here's the outdoor turntable. This gives us the final clue we needed as to where the roundhouse was located. It was a busy route. It was on Wabash Railroad's very fast Detroit to St. Louis corridor. 8 passenger trains each way per day went through on this railroad in 1886 and did so until 1901 when it was sold to the Pennsylvania Railroad. Passenger service ended pretty quickly after it was no longer part of the Wabash corridor. The Wabash Railroad was the third one to enter the city. It was built originally, the first part from Detroit to Butler in 1881 to connect with the Eel River Railroad. So we see it coming down through Arctic and it gets to Butler, and its sole purpose was to connect to the Eel River to make that corridor all the way down to St. Louis. In 1902, Wabash was going to lose the lease of the Eel River Railroad, so they completed this track down to New Haven in order to continue to have its high-speed service to St. Louis. And here's all the nuts and bolts of this one. So in 1881, the Detroit, Butler, and St. Louis built the railroad to Butler. It was renamed Wabash, St. Louis, and Pacific that same year, then Wabash Railroad in 1889. Wabash constructed the extension from Butler to New Haven in 1902. And then it just changed names. Wabash Railway was purchased, it had control by the Pennsylvania Railroad from 1928 to 64. It was renamed Wabash Railroad a second time in 1942. It was leased to the Norfolk and Western Railway in 64. It became part of the Norfolk and Western Railway in 1991 and has been part of Norfolk Southern Railway since 1998. This is one of the first 4 steam locomotives that the railroad purchased for construction of the line from Detroit to Butler. So here's what it looked like coming down from Detroit. The original line in 1881 was this yellow line, and it came down and turned and ran down along the New York Central and met end to end with the Eel River Railroad in the middle of Broadway. Then when they lost the lease of the Eel River in 1901, they realigned the track through the crossing a little bit and ran it down through here and on down to New Haven. And this depicts what their yards look like in Butler. They primarily served the Butler Company, but they also did serve others through these team tracks down in here. This is what it looks like standing down at the depot and looking north. Here's where the track left the main line to go connect to the Eel River Railroad. And then this is the Wabash main line looking north toward Detroit, and there's WB Tower again. And the lower photo shows a westbound freight train under steam power at Broadway. It had just stopped and filled up with water at the water tank. The depot was beautiful. All of the depots built in between Butler and New Haven in 1902, which so Grable, Spencerville, St. Joe, Butler, all got depots that looked like this with all the Victorian gingerbread and everything. They were really pretty. That all went away pretty quickly, but it did remain for a few years. This was a horse race track that was behind the Butler Company. And in the lower photo, you see that these nice features are gone from the roof by the date of this thing. I don't know what that is, but we're looking north again. This is what it looked like in the final years. This sign here, it does still exist, but not the building. It's all gone. And I don't know when it was torn down. I think 1984. So Butler's railroads today, Norfolk Southern Railway operates both the former New York Central and the former Wabash Railroad. The Eel River / Vandalia Railroad was abandoned between Auburn and Butler in 1954, and the track was removed in 1956. The only remnants I know of the old railroads in Butler are the sign from the Wabash Depot that you just saw. And I know of nothing else from the total of 3 depots, 3 rail yards, 2 roundhouses, and an interlocking tower, and I don't know of any artifacts from any of that. So just a quick overview again of some of the things. So here we have the New York Central was the first one to come into town. The Eel River Railroad was number 2, came in through here and then connected with the Wabash right there. Wabash was 3rd. Here's WB Tower in the southeast quadrant of the crossing. The Wabash yards were here behind the old Butler Company, and the Eel River Railroad yards were here. New York Central's yards extended all the way from behind the Universal Tool at the time, all the way down here to the milk condensery, United Milk's plant. And this is the final slide. I just thought it was pretty neat. It's from a studio that existed in Butler at one time, and this is just a prop. You can see that you can't see through the railings and stuff, and so you just stood there and got your picture taken. And it was the fast Wabash Banner limited train. So My email address is there. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to email me.
So if people want to learn more about the Butler Railroad, they can
Yeah, just
email
email
you.
me. Just email me. I get email every day, so, and it's fine. Yep, you are invited.
So I understand you've written a new book. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so my books are about ghost railroads, railroads that no longer operate, and this one ran from Elkhart, Indiana. It ran through, Shipshewana, LaGrange, Orland, Angola, and then just over the state line to the little village of Columbia, Ohio, and it never got any further, and the man that was the money behind it, he passed away, and so the whole railroad went away in 1918. It was called the St. Joseph Valley Railway and the St. Joseph Valley Traction Company, and I just finished the book. I picked them up Friday, so they're available. I have one more I'm going to finish about a railroad that I started researching down southern Indiana back in the 1990s, and I've now finished all of the manuscript for it, and I got to put the photos and maps in it, and that'll be the last one I write. I'm not going to write any more books. It's too hard.
So where can people buy your book?
Well, they got to email me, and I'll tell them where to send. I've got 3 books out. One is about the Lake James Electric that you mentioned. It ran from Angola up to Lake James, and it's $15. I just finished another one about a railroad called the Syracuse and Milford, which ran between Syracuse and south of Milford, Indiana, kind of northwest of here. And then the third one I just finished is the St. Joe Valley. So the Syracuse and Milford and the Lake James Electric are $15, and the St. Joseph Valley is $20. And you just contact me by email if you're interested, and I'll tell you where to mail it. And I'll send them to you in the mail.
Can you tell us a little bit about the book that you're working on about the Southern?
Yeah, it was a Ferdinand Railroad, and if you are old enough to remember Petticoat Junction, then
Yes.
you are looking at the Ferdinand Railroad. It was a 6.5-mile short line that had the last operating steam engine of what was called the American class. They were small, lightweight steam engines, and it had the last one that was operating in Indiana. And it pulled an ancient combine coach. I mean, it was just like Petticoat Junction. I mean, it did finally dieselize, and it operated not financially well, but it operated until 1991 and was then abandoned. So I was living down there, and I got interested in it, and I went overboard. It's going to be a very long book, probably 80-some pages with photos and maps.
That's good,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm going to get it done this year. I've been working on it for 2 decades, and it's time to get it over. Yes.
So why trains? What interested you
I don't
in
know.
trains?
I remember my dad taking me down to the yards when I was really little, and I think it was Eel River yards, because there was still a depot there at the time, but the tracks were on. And he told me that there had been trains there at one time, and well, so I liked them, and I kind of kept track of trains for a while, and then I eventually joined the Navy. I went to college and joined the Navy, and it all had to sit on the back burner for a while. When I got out and I started working in public administration, I renewed my interest in it and started really digging into them. So I have been to the National Archives several times. I've been to the State Archives many times. Every newspaper along the line, every library, of everything I research, I find as much information as I can in every possible source. So it is difficult if you are trying to be correct. So it's challenging. It's interesting, but it's very challenging.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we understand there's a question from one of our viewers, live streaming through Facebook.
Someone's asking if you know what classes the steam engine used at the Henry Ford Greenfield Village. Are you familiar?
Yes, I know what they're talking about, but I don't know which one. They're using it in the village. Yeah, I've seen it. I'm sorry, I'd have to look it up online. I have been up there and seen it, but I don't remember, what was running.
If you want to, you can use that if you'd like to. The computer, it should be connected. I don't know if you have any other questions, any other comments, Jane?
Oh,
Ronnie does that?
please tell us the name of your book, your most recent book.
The one that I just now finished?
Yes.
St. Joseph Valley Railroads in Indiana and Ohio. St. Joseph Valley Railroads in Indiana and
In Ohio.
I have the date on it, but I don't, 1903 to 1919 or something like that.
Okay.
Oh, there's a, yeah, I need to get a browser.
Yeah, I don't see one.
We don't have one. They were rebuilding another, but may not be done yet, they say.
Yeah, I know that they've got one of the most powerful steam engines ever built that's inside, and it was an Allegheny. But I don't see, let me see if I can hook it up here.
An Allegheny,
Steam locomotives typically they are classified by their wheel arrangement. Unpowered leading wheels, powered wheels, and unpowered trailing wheels. And then each one of them is given a name. Like the Ferdinand locomotive is a 440. 4 leading wheels, 4 powered wheels, no trailing wheels. And it was called the American type. So an Allegheny is a 2666, and it was called the Allegheny.
That's what I
So,
was talking about, I didn't know how they were grouped.
so if I want to learn more about this, I mean, this is a fascinating subject. Can you recommend some resources?
I mean, if you're going to be doing research on a specific, yeah, let me get in here for a second. If you're going to be, you're going to have to, if you're going to do really deep research, just say, okay, and you're going to go to the National Archives and you're going to go to the state archives. And, yeah, you're going to hit every library, and you're going to have to hit all the newspapers. You know, go buy a subscription to newspapers.com. Which one?
There's a picture up there, somewhere happened to see this.
Yeah, that's a 440, and I remember seeing that, but I don't know. What is this?
Oh, there's a different ads.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hit about the village, or it says group.
Nope.
I should put this up on the screen so people can see what
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at.
I don't know where it is.
More in the background, right?
I know it should have had roster on here someplace.
So we're hearing from our camera person, tech man, Andrew LaVerghetta. Say hello to the folks, Andrew.
This is the museum. Yeah, I don't know where it is on here.
Well, maybe we can look it up and comment on the video afterwards.
Yes, we're going to, after this is over, we will, sorry, sorry about that, the volume. After this is over, we will be uploading this show, this episode, to YouTube.
Yeah, I don't see anything about where we're gonna find. Yeah, this is one we went through already, and I don't see anything up here about it.
Okay, yeah, I think, there we go, rides at Greenfield Village in the bottom left.
Yeah, let's see what we got. Yeah, now I can't, it's too dark. That's a 440. So that's an American locomotive there. If we get rid of all the text, it would be nice. That, yeah, see if there's a roster on here anywhere. Nope. Sorry. Try Greenfield Village roster.
They also have a diesel engine we're hearing, so
A diesel engine?
that's what they're saying.
There we go.
Ah. We're so happy that you're asking these questions and giving us this information.
Yeah, this is a little Plymouth, these are called diesel mechanical, so this is not an electric drive. Like diesel train engines today aren't diesel driven, they're electric motors. that are powered by the diesels and generators. But this is a direct drive mechanical, a diesel hooked up through a transmission to the wheels, just like in a car or a truck. That is a 440 American class locomotive, and it was one of the most largest volume steam, I think, of any wheel arrangement ever built was the American style, American type. Everybody had one. That's a 442, and that was called the Atlantic type. And so let me explain these. If the leading wheels are unpowered, then you have powered wheels, then you have trailing wheels that are unpowered. So all locomotives will have at least, steam locomotives will have at least 3 numbers: unpowered leading, powered, and unpowered trailing. So this is a 442, and a 442 happens to be called the Atlantic type. They were the early fast passenger locomotives. And then this is a little switcher. Well, no, is that a, yeah, that's a switcher. It's an 06, yeah, kind of interesting. It's more of an unusual type. It's an 062, a 062. So or is it a 042? I can't really tell here. It looks like a 062. It's a 6. So no unpowered leading wheels, so a 0. 6 powered wheels and 2 trailing wheels, so 062. Very unusual. And another American, 440, so it's an American type. And this is another industrial locomotive, and it's a General Electric, and it has 2 engines, one under each hood, each driving a generator, and then it has electric motors on the axles. And that's the end of the roster there. Interesting.
We're 3 minutes after the hour, correct?
Oh,
Anything else that you want to tag on?
tell us again the name of your new book,
St. Joseph Valley Railroad in Indiana and Ohio.
and take us back to the slide that has your email address, please.
Yes. Click, and there it is.
And you can buy copies of Craig's books at,
That email address, yes.
That email.
Send me an
Contact
email
you.
address, and I'll tell you where to send your funds, and I'll put them in the mail.
and the price of your most recent book?
Is $20.
$20.
And that includes the shipping, or the postage. So, yeah, I've only got no place yet to sell it because it just came out Friday. And so I have been making the rounds to give it to the libraries and the historical societies that were on the line. And other than that, I'm standing by to sell them.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Greg,
you. It's good
for
to- it's good
coming
seeing
on
you.
the
You're
show. We have new updated hours, which are listed on our website. And we're open 6 days a week. And we are coming to you live through the Willinar Genealogy Center, which again is a service of the Eckhart Public Library. And this live streamed show to Facebook will be uploaded to YouTube, and you can watch it anytime. And again, I want to thank Craig for being
Thank
on
you.
our
Yeah,
show.
Thank you for hosting me.
And the title of your new book is?
St. Joseph Valley Railroad in Indiana and Ohio.
And people who want to buy it,
Email address. cjberndt@yahoo.com.
thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.